You're the biggest mistake I ever made. My father's voice boomed across the floral-covered ballroom, shattering the chatter like a gunshot. Every head in the grand reception hall turned. Forks paused midair. Conversations froze mid-laugh. I stood there, stunned, my cheek still stinging from where his champagne-soaked hand had just struck me. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us what would you do in this situation? Be honest, tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Dad, I whispered, barely able to breathe. He took another step toward me, pointing with trembling fingers that reeked of rage and wine. You should have never been born, Avery. You've embarrassed this family enough. Get out of my sight. Gasps spread like wildfire. People didn't know whether to interfere or pretend it wasn't happening. My mother stood nearby, lips pressed tight, her eyes darting like a coward's. My brother, still in his tux from the ceremony, looked away, adjusting his bow tie like this was all beneath him. I raised a son who's a lawyer, my father barked, motioning proudly toward Logan. And a daughter who waits tables and thinks she deserves to sit with family? What a damn joke. Laughter, soft, mocking, broke from the crowd. A cousin, one of Logan's friends, a bridesmaid. I could feel the heat rising behind my eyes, the shame crawling down my neck. Then came the final blow. You're not part of this family anymore, my father said coldly. You're just the help. Security, escort her out. I didn't flinch. Not even when two suited men started toward me. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't move. Instead, I spoke. You're all going to regret this, I said quietly, voice steady, gaze locked on the man who'd once kissed my scraped knees when I fell off a bike. The room laughed again. My mother shook her head, muttering, Just let it go, Avery. Don't ruin Logan's day. Ruin it. I tilted my head, smiling now, a smile I hadn't used in a long time. No, Mother. I'm about to make it unforgettable. And then, the ballroom doors flew open. The wind surged in, tugging at veils and napkins, and a tall man in a black suit stepped through the entrance, like something out of a dream or a nightmare. Polished shoes, crisp tie, cobalt eyes that pierced straight through judgment. And, behind him, two bodyguards. A third man holding a case. And a photographer, already snapping pictures like this was a press event. Gasps turned into silence. You could have heard a fork drop. Who the hell? My father began, but his voice broke. The man's gaze swept the room and landed on me. That slow, intentional walk he took across the marble floor? It silenced every whisper, froze every limb. No one recognized him, but the power he carried? That was undeniable. He stopped inches from me and looked down, a softness behind his smirk. Are you ready, Mrs. Cole? He asked, offering his hand. My father choked. Mrs. who? Grayson turned slowly. Grayson Cole, CEO of Coltech, Forbes cover, March issue, billionaire, and Avery Morgan's husband. Any other questions? It was like the air got sucked from the room. Logan's mouth parted. My mother staggered a step back. A distant uncle dropped his wine glass. And my father? He swayed, like the world beneath his feet had just collapsed. You married a Cole, he croaked. You what? I tilted my chin. 4 years ago. Secret ceremony. Beach house in Malibu. No one from this toxic family was invited. Grayson stepped forward, eyes locked with my father's. And when you raised your hand to her, he said, his voice now cold as ice, you laid hands on my wife. My father's knees buckled. Literally buckled. The crowd, once smug and entertained, now looked like a sea of ghosts. And I finally felt the power in my own spine. I finally felt safe. Grayson held my hand tighter and said quietly, You don't have to stay here another minute, Avery. I've got a jet waiting. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. I didn't follow Grayson out the door, not yet. I looked around that ballroom, the chandeliers glittering above smug faces gone pale, the silverware trembling on china, the band frozen mid-note, and I realized something. For the first time in my life, they weren't laughing at me. They were terrified of me. I turned to face my father. His skin, once red with rage, was now ghost white. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "I warned you," I said quietly, stepping toward him, each heel click echoing like a countdown. "But you couldn't help yourself, could you?"
He didn't respond.
My mother reached out, voice shaking. "Avery, honey, please don't do this here." I snapped my head toward her. "Here? You mean the same ballroom where you stood by while your husband hit me in front of hundreds of guests? The one where you watched your daughter be humiliated just to keep the peace?" She winced, her hands trembling. "It's your brother's wedding." "Oh, don't worry," I interrupted with a razor smile. "I'll make sure it's memorable." Grayson turned slightly. "Do it." That was all I needed. I nodded toward the man with the briefcase behind him. He stepped forward and opened it in front of the head table. Inside were documents, thick, sealed envelopes. My voice rang out, sharp and clear. "Effective as of this morning, Coltech has acquired 73% controlling interest in Logan Morgan Enterprises. My husband bought out every single stakeholder, quietly, legally, and without a single soul in this room realizing it." Logan stood. "You're bluffing." The lawyer beside the briefcase pulled out a single page, signed, notarized, and stamped. "You'll find your father's signature right there," I said. "He sold 41% last year, when he needed to cover a lawsuit. The rest? We picked up on the open market, thanks to your golden boy reputation tanking your stock." Logan staggered. Grayson continued. "As of now, Avery and I have full executive control. Your company is no longer yours. The board will meet Monday to elect a new CEO." The silence shattered. My brother's fiancée gasped audibly and took a step away from him. Her father looked furious. A bridesmaid quietly stepped toward the side exit. My father gripped the table, chest heaving. "You tricked us." "No." I cut in. "You pushed me out. You mocked me for waiting tables, remember? You said I'd never amount to anything. All while I built a life outside your circus. All while my husband made sure your house of cards would one day collapse." Grayson added coldly, "Today is that day." Then I looked down at my dress. It wasn't designer. It wasn't white. It was the same blush-tone gown I wore when Grayson and I eloped barefoot in Malibu. The same dress you all would have spat on, until you realized who was holding my hand. My father dropped into his chair like gravity had betrayed him. My mother sat beside him, shaking, as if she were watching a horror movie she helped write. And Logan? He turned to me, all arrogance gone. "Avery, you can't take everything. Please. We're family." "Family?" I laughed bitterly. "You laughed when I got slapped. You called me trash. You told your friends I was just a waitress." He looked away. "And now," I continued, "you get to see how that waitress rewrote the ending." I turned back to Grayson. "Let's go." As we began to walk toward the doors, the photographer snapped a final shot. Behind us, the hall erupted, some screaming, some crying, some too stunned to speak. My heels clacked against marble like thunder, and the gold exit doors burst open with a gust of freedom. Outside, a stretch limousine and 3 black SUVs waited by the curb. The sky was turning crimson, like the whole day had been bathed in blood and power. And still I wasn't done. Grayson leaned close as he opened the door for me. "You want to go home? Or do you want to finish this your way?" I looked back at the ballroom. "My way." And I smiled. We didn't drive away. Instead, Grayson took my hand and whispered to his driver, "Stage it." Within 5 minutes, everything outside the venue changed. 2 luxury black vans rolled in behind the limo. From them stepped 6 security guards in suits. A small stage was being erected at the entrance of the grand hall. Speakers, a mic, and a red velvet rope held back the curious, camera-holding onlookers already gathering on the sidewalk. Inside, they had no idea what was about to hit them. I could have walked away, taken the high road, left them choking on their guilt and shame. But I wasn't here for peace. I was here for truth. Grayson touched my waist. "You sure about this?" I looked him in the eyes. They buried me. They don't get to rewrite the story. He nodded and stepped aside, giving me the stage. The glass doors of the reception hall burst open again. I walked out, this time not as the humiliated daughter or mock sister, but as the woman who held the room's fate in her hands. Some guests followed behind, still dazed. Phones came out. Lights flashed. I stepped to the mic, heels steady on the platform. "This won't take long," I began. Since everyone in there had so much to say about me behind closed doors, I figured it's only fair I return the favor on record. A murmur spread through the crowd. I was 17 when my father called me a disgrace for choosing to help pay bills instead of going to college. I was 19 when my mother told me no man would marry me if I kept working in diners. I was 21 when I bought my first investment property in cash while you were all too busy pretending I was a burden. My father had stepped outside now, pale and trembling, as I turned toward him. And I was 24 when I met Grayson Cole and fell in love, not with his money, but with the way he never once made me feel small. The crowd was completely silent now. My father beat me at my brother's wedding, called me a mistake. My family laughed. I paused. But here's the punchline. That mistake now owns everything you built. Every business, every property, every investment you once bragged about, my legal team is transferring those assets as we speak.
Gasps.
You see, while you were too busy kicking me out of the house, I was building one of my own, with walls you can't tear down. My mother stepped forward, tears streaking down her perfectly powdered face. "Avery, please, we were just trying to push you to do better." "No," I snapped. "You wanted to control me. You wanted me to need you. But I don't. I never did. And now you need me." I took out a folded letter from my clutch. "This is a restraining order. Signed and filed. You are legally prohibited from approaching me, my husband, or any of our properties, offices, or homes." "Please," my father whispered, broken. "We were wrong." I leaned in close to the mic, staring straight into their shattered pride.
No.
"You were cruel." Then I stepped back. Behind me, Grayson lifted his hand. The screens lit up footage from hidden security cameras. Inside the house. At family dinners. In the hallway where my father once cornered me and called me a stain on the name Morgan. In the living room where my mother said, "If only we had stopped after Logan." Every lie, every insult, every manipulation projected on the big screen for everyone to see. Guests covered their mouths. Some walked away, ashamed. Others stared, stunned, as the Morgans unraveled in front of the world. My voice returned one last time. "To everyone who's ever been made to feel like less, you're not. You were just surrounded by the wrong people." I turned to my husband. "Let's go." He nodded, wrapping an arm around me as the security guards parted the crowd. And as we stepped into the limo, my phone buzzed. A news alert. Billionaire CEO's secret wife reveals family betrayal during brother's wedding. Internet stunned. I looked back at the chaos behind me. The family that tried to bury me now buried under the weight of their own truth. And, for the first time, I felt free. They didn't go quietly. 3 days later, the headlines had barely cooled before the Morgans began clawing at whatever scraps of dignity they had left. First came the press statements, phony apologies, claiming they were blindsided by Avery's hidden life. Then came the legal threats, cease and desist letters, a demand for privacy. But I'd seen it coming. Grayson and I had prepared for everything. What we hadn't prepared for was my heart. Because while they were scrambling to rebuild their image, I was alone in our penthouse suite in Manhattan, staring out at the skyline, wondering why it still hurt. Why did I still feel that slap on my cheek? Why did my mother's silence echo louder than my father's violence? Grayson walked in behind me quietly, setting down a coffee beside me. "You haven't slept," he said. "I'm fine," I whispered. He walked over, wrapping his arms around me from behind, grounding me. "It's okay to admit it still hurts."
You wanted them to change.
"You wanted them to apologize before the cameras came on." I turned, eyes brimming. How did I become the villain to people who were supposed to love me? "You didn't," he said softly. They chose their comfort over your pain. But you're not alone anymore. I nodded into his chest. Still feels like I lost something. He took my hand and led me to the table where a large, sealed envelope sat. What's this? Evidence. From a private investigator I hired last year. I wasn't sure you'd ever want to see it. But now maybe you should. I hesitated, then opened it. Photos, records, letters. And suddenly, my whole world turned again. A birth certificate, hospital discharge papers, a signature from a woman named Elaine Crawford. Not my mother. A journal entry from her. I begged them not to take her. I was 16. They told me I was unfit, that the Morgans could give her a future. I only held her once. She had dark hair and the softest little fingers. They named her Avery. My heart stopped. I'm adopted? Grayson nodded. They never told you. They made you think you were the failure, the burden. But the truth is they didn't create you. They chose you, then tried to erase who you really were. I couldn't breathe. I picked up the next page. A photo of Elaine. Eyes just like mine. She was older now, working in a florist shop in upstate New York. Unmarried. Alone. Waiting. Grayson placed a hand on mine. She didn't abandon you. They took you. Tears slipped down my face, but they were different this time. Not shame. Not anger. Truth. I stood. I need to see her. Already booked the flight, he said. We arrived in a small town hours later. No cameras. No spotlight. Just wind chimes and lavender and the scent of soil and second chances. Elaine stepped out of her flower shop in a faded apron. The moment she saw me, she froze. Her hand covered her mouth. I walked forward, voice trembling. I think I'm your daughter. She dropped everything and ran. We collided in the middle of the sidewalk, years of silence breaking with a single embrace. And for the first time since I was a little girl, I felt home. The wind rustled the petals on the flower stand outside Elaine's shop as she held me like she'd never let go again. It wasn't just a hug, it was a reunion that healed something I didn't know could be healed. Inside, she made tea with shaking hands, her voice soft like worn lace. I used to imagine this moment every birthday. I never knew where you were. I tried. I swear I tried. I believe you, I whispered. And I meant it. Because unlike the Morgans, Elaine looked at me with nothing but love. No judgment. No conditions. Just awe. We spent hours talking, filling in the blanks the Morgans had kept hidden for decades. I learned how they'd promised her I'd be raised with everything she couldn't give. How they'd erased her name from my life. How they'd raised me not as a daughter, but a project. A reminder that I owed them something. By the time we left, I wasn't broken anymore. I was reborn. But my story wasn't over. Back in Charleston, the Morgans were imploding. The company's board had dissolved Logan's executive privileges after the takeover. Investors were pulling out. Employees were protesting. But they hadn't hit rock bottom. Not yet. That morning, I stood in front of the courthouse, reporters everywhere, as my attorney handed me one final envelope. This will finish it, he said. Inside, a civil lawsuit for emotional abuse, public defamation, and wrongful concealment of legal adoption identity. Filed against Thomas and Margaret Morgan. With evidence. With dates. With names. I didn't want their money. I didn't even want their apology. I wanted their legacies shattered the way they tried to shatter me. The media storm was immediate. Adopted daughter of Charleston elite exposes family's lies. Secret billionaire husband funds legal battle. They couldn't hide anymore. My father went silent. My mother cried in interviews. Logan released a statement claiming he was the victim. But the public didn't buy it. Because I wasn't that silent girl in the corner anymore. I was Avery Morgan Cole. And I had a voice now. Grayson held a press conference the next day, right on the Morgan estate lawn. The same lawn I used to play on barefoot while they ignored me. I bought this property last week, he announced. Not for the real estate, for the symbolism. And then he handed me the deed. I stood in front of the house where I was once told I was just the help and turned to the crowd. I grew up thinking I didn't belong, that I was a mistake. But I wasn't. I stared straight into the cameras. I was just the beginning of something stronger. The house behind me would be turned into a shelter for young women aging out of the foster system. Every room, every memory rewritten. Logan tried to sue for defamation. He lost. My father tried to apologize through a letter. I burned it. My mother sent flowers to our penthouse. I donated them to a cemetery. And as I stood with Grayson and Elaine that night, on the rooftop overlooking the city lights, I felt a peace I'd never known. Not because I got revenge, but because I reclaimed myself. They called me a mistake. Now the world called me unstoppable. And I smiled, whispering to the wind, "Let that be the legacy."